scary. 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 Uh-oh. Scary. 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 Uh-oh. Scary sounds. Scary sounds. It's okay. It's okay.
See, there you go again. Did this sound?
No, the sounds are scary. He's scared of sounds. So he's getting scared of the sounds.
How's he gonna make it outside when a bird is chirping at him?
He'll be okay. He's just squirrely. He's just squirrely. He's just squirrely. Oh, you're not gonna get your almonds now? You're too scared? You're too scared for an almond, squirrely? That's not the squirrely I know. That's not the squirrely I know. He's brave. Oh. But if he likes that armpit, you like that that arm section, don't you, squirrely? You like that inner arm. Oh, squirrel. Oh, squirrel.
You're coddling that squirrel.
I'm trying to release him.
August the 3rd, 1750. Last Tuesday, that is the 28th instant, the famous musician Mr. Johann Sebastian Bach, Royal Polish and Electoral Saxon court composer, Kapellmeister of the princely court of Saxe-Weissenfels and of Anhalt-Köthen, director Chorii Musici of the Thomas Schule here, in the 66th year of his age, died from the unhappy consequences of the very unsuccessful eye operation by a well-known English oculist. The loss of this uncommonly able man is uncommonly mourned by all true connoisseurs of music.
And so it was that in the small provincial city of Leipzig in 18th century Germany, a certain talented, undoubtedly, but obstinate and often troublesome director of music passed away and was buried. The life of the city went on as usual, the vacant post was quickly filled, and the work and name of the so lately deceased composer was almost entirely forgotten. It was to be nearly 50 years before his works were to be rediscovered and reassessed. Almost 100, until this humble Kapellmeister was to be seen in the correct frame in musical history. Today, more than 200 years later, he is rightly regarded as the greatest musical genius of all time, Johann Sebastian Bach. In 17th century Germany, in many of the towns, the name Bach was synonymous with that of musician. There were Bachs in almost every town band or organ loft. Their history stretched back generations to form a tightly knit clan. Johann Sebastian, of that same clan, born into this heritage, was the first to break free from the parochial town bands and reach for higher goals. Johann Sebastian was born in 1685, the eighth child of Johann Ambrosius Bach, not surprisingly a musician by trade. Naturally, the young Johann Sebastian was taught to play the violin from an early age. Unhappily, both his parents died when he was 9, and he was taken in by his eldest brother, Johann Christoph, organist at the Michaeliskirche at Ohrdorf. This was Johann Sebastian's first introduction to the church organ, and he quickly mastered the intricacies of the instrument. Later, his own son, Carl Philipp Emanuel, was to write in his father's biography of the enthusiasm of the youth.
A volume of clavier pieces by famous contemporary masters was for some strange reason denied the young boy, despite his pleadings. His ceaseless desire to better himself led him to the following innocent deception. His brother had secured the book in a cupboard with only bars for a door. At night, when everyone was asleep, he was able to squeeze his small hands through the bars, roll up the paper-bound book, and pull it out. He then proceeded to copy it out by moonlight.
At the age of 15, his voice won him a place in a select choir school in Lüneburg. It was during this stay at Lüneburg that he was invited to join the orchestra of Duke Ernst of Weimar. Although his stay with the Duke was comparatively brief, it made him very aware of the other influences on music. Slowly, yet surely, Bach was amassing a vast wealth of experience of styles, of techniques, and of tastes. Johann Sebastian was able to make the annual journey described by his biographer, Forthan.
Since it was impossible that they should all live in the same town, yet wanted to meet at least once a year, they decided upon a certain day on which everyone had to be present at a place previously agreed upon. This practice continued even when the number of family members had greatly increased and spread across the borders of Thuringia into Upper and Lower Saxony, as well as into Franconia. The place chosen for this annual Bach convention was usually Erfurt, Eisenach, or Arnstadt. Since the gathering consisted purely of organists, presenters, and town musicians, who were all connected with the church in one way or another, the convention was opened with the singing of a chorale, as was the custom in those times. After this pious introduction, they passed on to some lighter entertainment, singing folk songs, some funny, some even frivolous, but always making harmony.
At the age of 18, Bach was invited to play at the dedication of a new organ in nearby Arnstadt. This he did with such skill that he was offered the permanent post of organist there. Now he had his very own organ on which to experiment, extemporize, and compose. His son again explains.
Now, for the first time, he began to reap the benefits of his untiring efforts to become an accomplished organist and composer. He had acquired his knowledge and techniques mostly by studying the best works of contemporary musicians, and by applying his own mind to the problems involved.
2 years after taking up this post, he determined that to improve, he had to gain the advice of the then greatest organist, Dietrich Buxtehude. So, absenting himself from his duties, he walked the 300 miles to Lübeck to visit the old master. Once there, he was so enthralled by the instructions given by Buxtehude that his official stay of 1 month stretched into an unauthorized one of 4 months. Still worse, the new ideas gained on his travels were to produce alarming results in his own church when he finally returned. He began to improvise, accompanying the chorales with a hitherto unknown freedom. The confrontation with the authorities was inevitable.
Johann Sebastian Bach, organist of the new church, you are summoned to explain your absence and discontinuance of figured music. This council desires to know who gave you leave of absence and where you have been so long.
I have been to Lübeck to study my profession. It was you who gave me permission.
You asked for 4 weeks' absence only, but stayed away about 4 times as long.
Oh, I had hoped that my assistant was good enough.
Complaints are being made about the way you accompany the chorales. This must stop, or else we shall have to look for another organist.
But it seemed that controversy was to follow Bach everywhere. He refused point blank to organize and run the boys' choir. He would not deal with such an unruly bunch of children. And anyway, it was not in his contracted employment. Yet again, he was before the authorities. This time it was to explain his part in a most unseemly brawl, as Forkel explains.
On August the 5th, 1705, Bach appeared before the authorities to complain about the student Geiersbach. The latter, as Bach was crossing the marketplace, had suddenly set upon him with a stick, calling him to account for having made abusive remarks about him. Bach had answered that he had not made abusive remarks about him, and no one could prove that he had, seeing that he had been going on his way perfectly quietly. But Geiersbach had replied that if Bach had not abused him, he had once abused his bassoon, and whoever abused his bassoon had abused him. Bach was a cur, and with this he again struck out at him. Bach, for his part, had thereupon drawn his dagger, whereupon Geiersbach had fallen into his arms, and the two of them had tumbled about until the other students had thrown themselves between them. At a further hearing, it transpired that Bach had indeed called Geiersbach a nanny-goat bassoonist, and it was indicated to him that he might well have refrained from this, especially as he already had the reputation of not getting along with the students. He was told that he must get along with the students, and they must not make each other's lives miserable.
It was probably with no regret, then, that the authorities at Arnstadt accepted Bach's resignation when it eventually came. The final reprimand that Bach received perhaps decided his action.
By what right have you recently invited into the choir loft, in order to make music there, a strange maiden?
Bach's new appointment was as organist at Mühlhausen, a post recently left vacant by the death of the acclaimed Johann Haller. His new contract was duly signed, entitling him to a salary of
85 gulden in money, and the following emoluments in kind: 54 bushels of grain, 2 cords of wood, 1 beech, and 1 oak or aspen, 6 times 60 faggots delivered to the door instead of acreage.
It was not long before he married his second cousin, Maria Barbara. She was none other than the strange maiden in the choir loft at Arnstadt. In his brief 2-year stay at Mühlhausen, he wrote many fine choral pieces and organ music for official, civic, and church occasions, amassed a useful library of sacred music, and persuaded the council to completely overhaul the organ. In time, he began to be regarded as a great expert in organ design and construction.
No one has ever tried out organs so severely, and yet at the same time as honestly as he. He understood the whole building of organs in the highest degree. Organists were terrified when he sat down to play on their organs and drew the stops in his own manner, for they thought that the effect could not be as good as he was planning. Then they heard an effect that astounded them. The first thing he would do in trying an organ was this. He would say in jest,
Above all, I must know whether the organ has good lungs.
and to find out, he would draw out every speaking stop and play in the fullest and richest texture possible. At this, the organ builders would often grow quite pale with fright.
Bach's stay in Mühlhausen was to be short. The church was Lutheran, and there was much dissension from within. In time, the arguments became so loud that his health began to suffer, and he could not concentrate on his writing. Against his will, he found himself being dragged into many of the arguments. Nevertheless, he hid the true reasons for resigning in his letter to the authorities.
It has always been my aim to carry out your wishes that church music should be performed to the glory of God. And as far as I've been able, I have also worked towards this end in the surrounding villages. The love of music is growing, where the singing and playing is often better than in our own city churches. At all times, I have cheerfully fulfilled my tasks, but have not been able to do my work without opposition. Also, if I may say so without disrespect, although my household economy has been frugal, I have not had enough to live on. God has been pleased, however, to open the door to a new situation in the services of His Serene Highness, the Duke of Sachen-Weimar. This offers a more adequate salary and the opportunity to strive towards the goal that most concerns me, that is, the betterment of church music. I therefore humbly beg your generous permission to retire.
And so, at the age of only 23, and with no animosity on either side, Bach and his new bride left Mühlhausen to return to Weimar, where he had once been employed as a court musician. Bach spent 9 years at Weimar, and it was to prove a very important time in his life. Here he developed and extended his skills, composing many famous pieces for the organ. He was comfortably off and reasonably happy in his duties. The Duke was a patron of the arts and science, and very useful to Bach.
The Duke was an exceptional man. He had become very religious at 3, preached his first sermon at 7, and knew every one of the 100 ministers of religions in his dukedom personally. But it was somewhat of a strict routine. Every child in his court had an education. Each member of his court went to bed at 9 o'clock in the summer and at 8 o'clock in the winter. He was married, but his wife left him after a couple of years, and he remained childless.
This last comment cannot be said of Bach, for his wife, Maria Barbara, was to present him with 8 children, 2 of whom were to become famous musicians in their own right. At Weimar, Bach was to gain fame, not only as an expert on organs, but in composition and virtuosity. Certainly his playing was astonishing, as his biographer, Forkel, tells.
At length, he acquired such a high degree of facility, and we may almost say unlimited power over his instrument in all the keys, that difficulties almost ceased to exist for him. As well in his improvisation as in executing his compositions, he is said to have possessed such certainty that he never missed a note.
But even Bach was not infallible.
He had such an admirable facility in reading and executing the compositions of others, which were all easier than his own, that he once said to an acquaintance, "I really believe I can play everything without hesitating, at the first sight." He was, however, mistaken. His friend invited him one morning to breakfast, and laid upon the desk of his instrument, among other pieces, one which at the first glance seemed trivial. Bach, according to his custom, went immediately to the instrument, partly to play, partly to look over the music that lay on the desk. In a few minutes, Bach got to the piece intended for his conversion, and began to play it. He had not got very far when he came to a passage at which he stopped. He tried again, and again stopped at the same passage. Reluctantly, he exclaimed, "No, I cannot play everything at first sight. It's just not possible."
Equally, his composing was masterly. His position as organist of the court meant that in each session he had to play 6 voluntaries, most of which he improvised. Yet his compositions for the organ have never been equalled. So much of Bach's work is of the same incredibly high standard. His choral preludes for the organ reveal him as a composer with an unsurpassed feeling for poetic tone painting, a predecessor of Beethoven, Berlioz, and Liszt, with their own particular genius for pictorial illustrations in music. One of the diversions at court was the occasional pitting of talents, one against the other. The one that affected Johann Sebastian was when he was challenged by the French organist Marchand to a contest in Dresden. For days the excitement grew. Who would win? And then it was discovered that on the allotted day, Marchand had fled. presumably because he had heard Bach practicing. Johann was declared the winner by default. It was natural for Bach to assume that after 9 years of faithful service, the highest musical post in the court, that of Kapellmeister, would be his. But it was not to be. For some reason he was overlooked, and the post was offered to someone else. This left him with but one course of action, and in 1717 he applied for a new post elsewhere. He was immediately accepted. But there was one small snag. The Duke would not let him go, and resorted to drastic measures to prevent him from absconding. Indeed, as the court secretary was to record,
On November the 6th, the concertmeister and organist Bach was confined to the county judge's place of detention for too stubbornly forcing the issue of his dismissal.
Bach was under arrest.
Deep is your love? How deep is your love? I really need to know, 'cause I'm living in a world of fear, breaking us down when they all should let us be. We belong to you and me. Da, 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 da. 'Cause we're living in a world of fear, breaking us down. When the ocean let us be, we belong to you and me. Ba 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 da 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 da. We've been living in a world of fear, breaking us down. When the ocean let us be.
Bach's confinement lasted less than a month. The Duke relented, and Johann was at last able to leave in order to take his new position. This was at the court of Prince Leopold in Köthen. The time in detention had certainly not been wasted, for here Bach wrote his Orgelbuchlein, or Little Organ Book. He described this in the title page as
a little book for the organ, wherein the beginner may learn to perform chorales of every kind, and also acquire skill in the use of the pedal, which is treated uniformly obligato throughout. To God alone the praise be given for what is herein to man's use written.
But with this move to Köthen, Bach was to turn his back on organ music. Henceforth, chamber music and sacred cantatas were to be his main preoccupation. As Kapellmeister to the court orchestra, Bach had attained the highest musical post open to him. An historian has described the position.
The Kapellmeister of Köthen is a learned court official and a composer of the highest order. He is responsible for directing, managing, and composing sacred as well as secular music at the court of an emperor, king, or duke, and for the supervision of the performances to the glory of God, the pleasure of his master, and for the benefit of the entire court. Sometimes he had between 50 and 100 persons under his command.
The young Prince Leopold was sociable and cultivated. The court was enlightened and appreciative. Here Bach was to spend the happiest years of his life. He was perfectly at ease, and the music he produced clearly reflects this.
There I had a gracious prince as master, who knew music as well as he loved it, and I had hoped to remain in his service until the end of my life.
The advantages of this new post were tremendous. His salary was far more than anything he had previously earned. No longer did he and his ever-growing family have to live in cramped lodgings, for they now had apartments in the palace. His patron, the prince, would often join in with the viola da gamba, violin, or harpsichord. The severities of the Weimar court were soon forgotten. Bach was free to go where he pleased. On one occasion, he dashed to Halle to meet the celebrated composer Handel, only to find he was a day too late. Handel had already departed for England. Alas, the two great musicians born in the same year and some 40 miles apart were destined never to meet. With his new orchestra, which contained many of the finest musicians in the land, Bach was able to experiment on new forms, blending new sounds and composing to the capabilities of his own musicians, to the delight of his audience. 6 such compositions he collected together and dedicated them to the Margrave of Brandenburg. Now commonly known as the Brandenburg Concertos, these pieces were almost lost forever, being sold in job lots when the Margrave died. It was not until the great Bach revival of the 19th century that the concertos were rediscovered. Since then, they have always enjoyed a place of prominence in concert programs. Even when the Duke travelled, he liked to take his music with him, and Bach often accompanied him. It was a sad day, however, when, on returning from such a journey, Bach received a shattering blow.
He had been a happily married man for 13 years, when, in 1720, on his return to Cothen from a journey with his prince to Carlsbad, he learned, to his great sorrow, that his wife was dead, and already at her grave. He had left her a strong and healthy woman, and not before he crossed the threshold did he hear that she had died.
However, it was not long before Bach had remarried. His second wife, Anna Magdalena Wilken, was the daughter of a musician and was 16 years his junior. He was now 36, and she was to remain his wife until his death some 29 years later. A short poem, written by Bach himself many years later, stresses their happiness together.
Your slave am I, sweet maiden bride. God gave you joy this morning. A crown of flowers your tresses hide, to dress your forms adorning. Oh, how with joy my head is filled, to see your beauty blooming, till all my soul with music's thrilled, my heart's with joy o'erflowing.
To the surviving 4 children by his first marriage, Anna was to present him with 13 more. One of his major works at this time was the first part of his book, The Well-Tempered Clavier. A new system of timing, or tempering, was beginning to be used with keyboard instruments, and it was Bach who was the first to exploit its potentialities. When the Well-Tempered Clavier was finally completed, nearly 20 years later, Bach had written a prelude and fugue for every major and minor key as exercises. Later known as the 48 Preludes and Fugues, or simply the 48, it represents an important step in the history of keyboard music. But steadily, Bach grew uneasy in his position. For one thing, his prince had married Princess Friederike Henrietta of Anhalt-Bernburg, a woman who disliked music, and, as Bach wryly pointed out,
She does what she can to make the musical inclination of the prince lukewarm.
life became less easy for Bach, and he began to look around for a change of situation. For one vacancy, he was turned down in favor of another candidate who gained the post by the simple expediency of depositing 4,000 marks in the church treasury. The next position for which he applied was that of cantor at St. Thomas's School in Leipzig. The first choice was not Bach, but George Telemann, a famous composer. This arrangement fell through, as a Leipzig chronicler explains.
On August 9th, the test for the cantorale was passed by Mr. Telemann, but after he had received an increase of 200 thaler from his present employer in Hamburg, his application was withdrawn.
Yet even then, the next choice was not, but a Christoph Graupner. His request to be released from his present duties, however, was greeted by a firm no, and an increase in pay also. So Bach, the third choice, was finally elected. But the council thought themselves hard done by. As one of the councillors remarked,
Since the best cannot be had, one must take the second best.
which remark only shows how mistaken some people can be. The new cantor in Leipzig took up his duties in 1717. As a local newspaper stated,
Last Saturday at noon, 4 carts laden with St. Thomas's. At 2 in the afternoon, he and his family arrived in 2 coaches and moved into their newly decorated lodgings in the school building.
Bach was to spend the rest of his life in Leipzig. He had to supervise the fort, maintain order and good behavior, direct the music in the churches, and maintain the organs. He also had to compose cantatas for Sundays and feast days. In all, he wrote 295 cantatas, all but 93 of which survive to this day. We have this description of him conducting the boys' choir.
He presides over 30 or 40 performers all at once, recalling this one hard, another by stamping the foot, another with a warning finger, keeping time and tune. At every moment, if anyone goes astray, and could keep all the musicians in order, restore any waverer to certainty, and prevent him from going wrong. Rhythm is in his every limb. He takes in all the harmonies by his subtle ear, as it were, uttering all the different parts through the medium of his own mouth.
And obstinacy. There is only one authenticated portrait of Bach, and that has been overpainted at some time, so we can only rely on our imaginations to picture this musical genius. But we
Across the pedals as if they were winged, and mighty sounds filled the church. His fingers were all of equal strength, all equally able to play with the finest precision. He had invented so comfortable a fingering that he could master the most difficult parts with perfect ease. and he was able to accomplish passages on the pedals with his feet, which would have given trouble to the 5 fingers of many a clever player of the keyboard.
Bach was one of the first musicians to play with a curved hand, yet he was surprisingly modest about his own undoubted talent.
There is nothing remarkable.
It is not surprising that his fame as a performer spread far and wide. His house became the center of musical pilgrimages, even in the small, insignificant provincial city of Leipzig, with its petty provincial squabbling, often disagreeing with his manner and style. They even criticized his passion for being too theatrical, and made him sign an undertaking to prevent any such repetition. That an innovative genius of Bach's caliber should have been shackled by such petty men is lamentable. But in all his dealing with them, Bach never acquiesced without a fight. On one occasion he wrote to the king himself, listing the injustices and annoyances to which he had been subjected.
I humbly request your majesty to comply with 2 submissions. 1. To direct the council not to molest my prerogative of appointing the choral masters, but uphold my due powers therein. 2. To be graciously pleased to consider the ordering of the consistum here to demand an apology from Rector Ernesti for the indignity put upon me, and to charge Superintendent Dr. Daling to instruct the school to show me the respect and obedience due to me. I look forward to receiving your majesty's exalted favors with undying gratitude, and with profound submission remain your majesty's most obedient and dutiful servant.
That Johann Sebastian should be capable of composing sublimely beautiful works against such a background is remarkable, but true. At times like these, he must have taken great comfort in his family.
Of my first marriage are living 3 sons and a daughter. Of my second marriage, 1 son and 2 daughters are living. As yet,
Well, no, it's like you like
my
that
children and my
flavor or
second
you do
wife are
not
still
in
young.
life.
The eldest boy is 6. All my children are born musicians. From my own family, I can assure you, I can arrange both a vocal and instrumental concert. My wife in particular has a very clear soprano, and my eldest daughter can give a good account of herself too.
Indeed, 2 of Bach's sons did become renowned musicians in their own right. Johann Christian Bach, who is sometimes referred to as the English Bach, as he lived a large part of his life in London, and Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, who was one of the first biographies of his father.
I wish we had club soda.
He was also appointed to the court orchestra of King Frederick the Great, and there is the story of when Johann Sebastian journeyed to visit his son there. As Forkel says,
At this time, the king used to have every evening a private concert, in which he himself generally performed some concertos on the flute. One evening, just as he was getting his flute ready and his musicians were assembled, an officer brought him the written list of the new guests. With flute in hand, he ran his eyes over the list, but immediately the king gave up his concert for the evening and invited Bach to try his fortepianos. After some time, Bach asked the king for a subject for a fugue on which he could extemporize.
so Bach played as the musical offering. In these, and the emotional St. Matthew's Passion, the D major Magnificat, and the brilliant Christmas Oratorio. Even in his final hours, he was able to write the chorale, even in our deepest need. He died in Leipzig on July the 28th, 1750, and was buried in an unmarked grave. And there he may well have lain forgotten. But many years later, it was realized that there was not one who set the world of music alight, but a modest man who produced consistency where only muddle had existed before, who drew together all the half-formed strands of ideas on music to produce a clarity of expression unsurpassed. It was not in his own lifetime that his true mark was made. It was in the generations of musicians then unborn who were to be profoundly influenced by his work in their own compositions. Beethoven, Schubert, Mendelssohn, Berlioz, and many. For Bach needs no tablet, no monument, no epitaph. His memorial exists in his music. Music which can excite, uplift, and inspire. This is the music of Johann Sebastian Bach.
In the wayward wind is a restless wind, is a restless wind that loves to wander, and I was born the next of kin, the very next stuck in to the wayward wind. I'm gonna make a music video like that. It's gonna be awesome. Can you imagine? I need a video editor. So now I guess I should buy a video editor since I'm rich. Does anybody know what kind of video editor I should buy? I feel like I'm gonna hit something. Whoa. Oh, I hope it's still light outside. Oh, it's not really. It's kind of. Doesn't make you dizzy. I just was looking at that camera. I think it's remarkable how I stay in focus while the world turns. And I think that's going to be my new strategy for my next music video. And what kind of video editing software should I get also? Okay, calling Corona, round 5. Let's see if we can get Janet JARVA on the line.
Hello, girl.
Hello, girl.
I have you on speaker so your daddy can hear you.
Oh, hello.
You found your phone.
Yeah.
Woohoo!
How, so are you you're congregating with the patient now?
I am.
Uh-oh.
Oh, so great.
What is the status of the patient?
I'm recovered.
You're recovered? Full of recovery?
Yep.
Are you telling me you can taste again?
Yep.
Oh my God. Thank the Lord.
Oh,
Do you,
you never got over 100.
well, but did you ever test positive for corona though?
I only had one test.
And it was negative.
Yeah, but
So
I
self-diagnosed.
think we had it. Tests are not that accurate where you are guaranteed to not have it if you don't test positive. I had a number of symptoms. I had no taste, I had chest pain, no smell, tired.
Well, that's good, right? Because that's like the vaccine now, right? Now you can't get it.
We don't know.
What?
What is Frank getting? There isn't a vaccine. There isn't any vaccine yet.
No, but I'm saying, yeah, but if you get it, then you can't get it again.
So they'll probably test for antibodies, I guess.
Right.
If you have it, you can't get the vaccine. Of course I can.
No, I'm saying you can't get coronavirus twice.
That's not. Nobody knows that.
Ay, ay, ay.
That has not been demonstrated. How are
But
you feeling?
isn't there, okay, riddle me this though, because I said this to somebody and they were like, no, but then I thought about it and I'm like, no, that's true. Because there's like a person, there's a patient 0, right, for whoever had coronavirus first in America. So there has to be like a finite amount of time from that person to like how long the virus could last in the country, right?
We may have some community if you've had it, but coronavirus is like the same family as the common cold. So you're not immune from getting future common colds if you have one. So the chances are that you're immune for a little while, and how long that is good to be true is unknown. So you probably have some immunity, but it won't last. Same thing with the flu. The flu happens, you can get the flu more than once, even though you've had it. So it's hard to tell exactly what the situation is actually has.
Wow.
Do you by any chance have my staple gun?
Didn't I didn't, it's not downstairs?
I can't find it.
Well, I can give you one.
No, you don't have to give me one. I just
Well,
want to know if you got it.
I thought I returned it, but I'm also rich with staple guns now because I found like a couple at this shoe thing.
Well, if you got one that says Craftsman on it, that's fine.
Okay. Well, I'll look.
That's a good one.
I've got several right now, so I'll look in my studio and in my car. I don't think I have one inside here, but I know I have several in my studio and several in my car, I believe. So we just had a weird thing happen where all the lights in the kitchen, the second floor, it was just like a power outage where all the lights on the second floor, there's like 3 floors, kind of like Nanny's house, but except they're all linked up, they're all connected, not separated. So all the lights went off on all the lights in the kitchen went off and the refrigerator went off, but the stove is still on and all the lights in the connecting rooms and the hallway are still on.
So you had a circuit breaker pop or a fuse pop. I don't know how old that house is. You need to go in the basement and find out where the fuse or circuit breaker panel is. And if it's circuit breakers, re-pop the circuit breaker.
Yeah. I know that routine, but I don't know. I think he went down to the basement and it's still I think he went down to the basement to do that, but it's still a mystery.
Chris went down?
Yeah.
Do you have fuses or circuit breakers? You can ask him.
I don't know. Fuses.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, then you gotta make sure that you put a good fuse back in. Don't take it by putting something other than a fuse that you don't have fuses gotta buy something cheap.
Yeah.
And take one out and read what the average is, a similar average on the new one. Like a 60 watt, what, it'll be amps. 15 amps is the common fuse. 50 amps, I'm saying 15 amps is a common one.
Yeah. It's
So
weird.
the screw in things.
So the fuse runs, so one fuse runs the refrigerator and the lights, and another fuse runs the stove and everything.
You probably have all kinds of fuses. All the different sections of the house have different fuses. So you got to figure out which one. How do you figure out which one's up?
I know that whole thing, the circuit breaker thing. Like, I don't know. I'm not even dealing with it, so.
There might be text down there, you know, like my circuit breaker box is writing this way. So if you have something like that, then if not, you have to try one by one.
Guess what we have?
Yeah.
That my friend Lauren got for us. And actually, I have to message her, but because she hasn't even gotten to play with them yet. But we have, off of the worldwide internet, we have badminton shuttle. Well, don't, not just, you haven't even heard the exciting part. You know I have that. You know I have already. So how would that be the cool thing? We have LED light up badminton shuttlecocks. Yes. So we can play, because you know how I'm always trying to get people to play, and I'll drag in the dark, and everyone's like, oh, it's dark, and then I make them play with me. You just turn them on. There's one that goes like, yeah, it's like a glowing, it's so easy to play. It's like the same as playing badminton in the day. It's like better the darker it is. Well, I haven't seen any, but I haven't even seen any fireflies.
That's because you swatted them out of the sky.
Was that how it works? They got attracted to you think the fireflies are going to chase the badminton?
No, you thought they were a badminton thing and you swatted them out of the sky.
Oh. Well,
You did it.
no, they don't. That hasn't happened yet. It could happen. I did have a strange thing happen though, where I was painting my nails outside and I finished, and there was a little gnat that must have flew onto my nail, and it got stuck there in the nail polish.
Oh, that's like dinosaurs with amber.
Yeah, except I should have tried to preserve him, but I don't see him anymore. I think he came off.
I got lots of kale, Jesse. Got an extra kale.
Oh, I've got tons of kale too, but it's all tiny and it's all right next to each other. And so
Giant kale.
You do? Okay, well can I come over now?
Well, briefly.
Briefly.
We don't mix too much, but sure, you can stop by. Why don't you go in the daytime and you could get the kale and lettuce? I got lots of lettuce.
Okay.
And if you wait a couple of days, I'll have pea pods for you.
Really? See, I wanted to grow pea pods.
I started them back in April.
And you didn't tell me. You didn't give me the heads up.
Yeah, we talked about pea pods. You were talking about planting them, and I said, they're not that easy, but you have to have fence form on.
Wait, but I was planting beans. Like
You're planting what?
like beans, like pole beans.
Yeah, well, beans, pole beans, you pole. Push beans, you don't need anything. They'll just have a bush, which is what I grow most of the time. I have grown pole beans. Yeah.
My beans, they
You need a tall pole for them to climb.
well, mine are all over. They came up, they went down, they died. There's been a lot of deaths.
Peppers, and he was going to give you, right? But I give you, they're kind of getting scrappy. Put them there.
Okay, yeah, I'll take them. They're plants. You don't have peppers or tomatoes yet, though, do you?
No, just fine.
Yeah, mine are still plants too. I had some lettuce in the front yard, but it got destroyed. I mean, I have some lettuce and kale plants that are like kind of okay. I've got some little. I don't have enough. I could make a miniature salad for one.
You could make a big salad with mine.
Have you talked to Eric?
Yeah, yesterday.
Oh, you did. How's he doing?
Okay, he went to work a couple of times this week. I haven't been exploring very much. But he's got a wild beard and wild hair. He looks really good.
Yeah. Well,
every time I tell him that, he rolls his eyes.
He looked good the last time we saw him.
Telling you, he does. But I'm sure he looks quite different than the Japanese. I'm gonna go like the Mario beard. No, I don't like your beard. You're right.
Yeah. When's the last time Dad grew a beard?
Not recently. Well, you know what? And the thing is, I would hate it, then he would shave it off, and I hated it so much I didn't even notice that he shaved it off.
That doesn't make any sense. That means you just hate his face. Then why wouldn't you notice that you could see it? It sounds like you hated the beard so much that you just learned to hate the face, that then you no longer looked at the face.
I know. So Chloe got a haircut. She looks like a king rat.
Oh no.
She's so much happier.
Oh, she is?
She was like wearing a fur coat going out in those hot days. And now she's much more active and bouncing around again. And
oh, okay.
Glad we got in a fight.
What?
Glad we got in a fight. She was laying low for a couple of days, but she's walking around pretty good now.
What the hell? What? With who?
I couldn't tell. It was late at night. We couldn't tell if she was in the house or out of the house. We kept calling her outside. But sometimes she'll go downstairs and just doesn't care if we call her. Or she I heard that cat fight out the window. But then Dad heard a cat fight. And called her. She came running.
What is she doing? What is she doing out there?
Have you lived in this house? You open the door, she runs out.
But she could have run right. She should have ran up to the house instead of getting in a fight out there.
That is the cat. I've seen the gray cat that is fought with her. But you know what? No one should fight with her on her own property.
I guess not. Is she injured at all? Have you looked at her nail?
She's doing all right.
What about her nail, though?
For that nail, I don't know what to do with it.
It's-
It's her paw. It had a split lip in her ear was bleeding. She doesn't remember, like her, the top of the ear. It wasn't the ear at the bottom. But it's extra ears. No. This happened on Thursday, so she's been walking around. She jumped up on the bed a couple of times last night. She's doing fine.
But what about her nail on her right paw, front paw?
I can't do that now.
Okay.
I can trim most of them, but she do for a trim, but she's too traumatized. I don't want to do it to her.
It's the 7th. Who's yelling upstairs? Well, I'm gonna come over then.
Well, let us know when you're thinking of coming over. Do it in a daytime so we can see you. How are you feeling? You don't have any symptoms or anything?
No, I mean, I feel like I feel like sick I feel like sick to my stomach in the morning sometimes.
Are you pregnant?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Any other
During the day. I don't know. I'm okay. I'm okay, actually. I'm like all right. I just need to work out more.
What have you been doing?
I think it's food and stuff. I don't know. Like I haven't been like I started drinking cream and like
Started drinking what?
I'm not drinking it anymore, but I was having like cream in my coffee for some weird reason.
Oh, okay, so that could be it.
But now I just got matcha tea. And that's gonna be my new thing. I don't know, I just bought it today.
Okay.
At the Japanese store. I've been collecting flowers at Home Depot. I want to show you guys my flowers and my squirrel. I think I'm
Squirrels?
yeah.
What does that mean?
I have a squirrel that I have a squirrel in his own squirrel room, but I'm going to release him outside.
Yeah, he needs to do that. Be careful, they have nasty bites.
He loves me because I saved his life. So he loves me. Like I'll put him like if I could Skype with you guys right now, I would show you him.
Well, you can do that. We can go to the computer.
Let me see if I can.
I did go to the Shiva.
Oh, you did? I didn't see you there. Wait, what do you mean?
I saw you signed in on the later end.
Yeah, I mean that was so hard to figure out. We're like, Cav was like, "Oh yeah, I have all the info and stuff." Like, then we started trying to do it. You have to like sign up for that. I mean, you already signed up for it and stuff.
I called the funeral director and said, "Hey, I can't get on. Send me a link." And he actually did. He sent me a link on the computer, and then I transferred to the iPad, and I could watch it. It was nicely done.
What about Zoom?
Me?
The only thing that was fun, well, one of the things that was funny was like like when they were all doing the like, I love
that. I love that.
Yeah, but when they all were supposed to be doing that together, they were like all so not together. It was like, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
That was kind of funny.
I like the story. The about him. I sort of got a sense of who he was. You know, I was hoping they would have pictures of him and stuff, but they didn't.
I don't know. Well, I'm hoping like they're gonna have a real life thing, you know, when people can. I think that'll be, you know, better when people
I
can.
like Gloria and her family. She was really, really nice, and she was really nice to Mel, and then Eddie looked beautiful.
Yeah. You should have seen her outfit. Actually, she was like, she looked a lot. She looked gorgeous. You couldn't see because when she came home, I was like, oh, we couldn't see your full outfit on the Zoom.
Right, you could only see the neck up, chest up.
Oh, can I Zoom you?
Tell me, yeah, can you send me something on Gmail? Janet.jobber@gmail. You have to send me an invitation.
Okay, clicking plus chat. Okay.
Where's my Zoom? I'll find it. But usually I get an invitation and I open that link and I'm all set.
Okay, so add a contact. So what's yours?
Do it on janet.jabra@gmail.com.
Okay, I sent you an invitation.
Okay. So far, the last one I got was 721. All right.
Do you know how to do it from there?
I gotta get on the internet. I think so. I have, you know who I've Zoomed with? Gail and Kathy. I've Zoomed with Tai Chi. I've Zoomed a book author, and that's about it.
You Zoomed a book author?
Like it was a book club type of thing. Let's see.
Has Dad Zoomed?
No, he's hopeless.
Well, that's good that you were there because I did scan through everybody, and I thought you just couldn't figure it out. I figured. He WebEx?
I can't do that.
What's that?
It's another thing like Zoom, but it isn't really
Uh-oh.
I'm not getting your email yet, but
it said
you did it at janet.jabra@gmail.com. Yesterday was Christine's birthday. We called her up.
Oh. I'll have to send her a message. You know Alex Johnson's pregnant.
Yes, I do.
I haven't called her yet.
Her friend Alex.
Alex Darby.
Georgia?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's exciting.
I know I have to call her. I have such anxiety about all the people I have to call. But I've called.
I like her. She was very nice.
Yeah.
I like the mother. I met her father at graduation. He looked like a turtle.
Well,
no, that wasn't him.
Well,
that was brother friend.
Well, you know what's fun? Well, his name's Shell, though.
The other friend, Chelsea.
Yeah, Chelsea's dad, you thought looked like a turtle, but
Chelsea's father had a turtle head. He had this big, long neck and then a small head. And Jesse said to me, "Doesn't he look like a turtle?" I'm like, "Yes! Yes, he does!" I don't remember him. I remember the mother. Yeah, the mother was sweet. I don't remember his father. So they weren't married. So they weren't together at that point.
Well, Alex's dad's name is Sheldon, so that's kind of a turtle theme.
Yeah, but I don't know whether Alex's father looks like a turtle. Because I'm not getting your email. Can you send it again?
It said it sent it.
I'm on my... It was janet.jarva.gmail.com.
Janet. I mean, that's what I did. Janet, period, Jarva, at gmail.com. Add contact. An invitation has been sent to janetjarva at gmail.com.
I'm looking at, I'm connected. I have Wi-Fi. Looking at Gmail. And I'm looking at Gmail. That's the only thing I have here is Gmail. And all the block I can't proceed.
I'm not holding any of that yet. All I did was invite you.
And think maybe I can send you an invite.
Hold on, I'm gonna go get squirrely in case this works.
The only way I've been able to do it in the past is to really focus on young people. How do you get young people to register and vote? And work stuff in the Obama because of young people not engaged. So they're Barack Obama saying this is an opportunity for the young generation to be registered. To get out there and share the electricals. We heard 2 peaceful protests, but he did it in such an even keel, unreactionary way that to me it's just vintage Barack Obama.
I think so. She's, Henny's defending him. She defends him a lot.
What is that?
That's your comment to see it.
Oh.
Hey, you want to go upstairs, monitor the eggplant? I'm going to smoke.
Okay.
This eggplant frying, okay?
Okay.
And there's potatoes in the oven that can come out when they look done to you. And then the bok choy has to be turned on.
For some reason, I don't have
Just
you.
step away for a minute. Are you going to do that within the next few minutes? Or?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
I am not getting any text from you on Gmail. The last thing I got was at 7. I don't know how to do that. Send a text, email to her. Oh.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, you're on the phone. You have contact.
I'm on Skype now.
Oh, you're on Skype. Okay, I have to get on the computer. Yeah, we can definitely Skype. All right, let me go to the computer. All right, well, I don't know how to do that either. We're going on to Skype. Are you ready for Skype?
Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna have to end this thing to do that. Okay. We're gonna eat in just a minute.
Don't look at me when you Skype because My hair's a mess.
Okay, I'll try not to look at you.
Just close your eyes.
Okay.
Alright?
Why can't you zoom though? Okay. Okay, I got it. And this to do it. BRB frame.
Okay, Dad's on,
Sorry.
what's your, Skype address?
Start call.
I got a, Jessica Jarva, is that you?
Yeah.
I did all with, is it the same one?
Probably.
I'll try it. Let's see. I'm trying to call you. I don't know what my phone number is.
JARVA.
I know who you are, honey. Yeah, absolutely. I tried. I'll try it again. She had everything like or something to them that she was on. So he was on it. No, my mixer was not connected. Oh, because it should go, all right. I'm still not getting you in Gmail.
Are you Janet JARVA?
Janet.Jarva. Janet. It's Janet Jarva. It's Janet Jarva, all one word.
Okay.
Do you remember me?
No mutual contacts.
What?
Janet M. JARVA. I'm
No. The camera thing.
I did.
Somehow we have our picture.
See you guys.
Did you click the camera part?
Yeah. It might be because I have to end this other thing. Let me try to end this.